Shalom, everyone. Welcome to Coffee and Connection, week 155. Here we are. For some of you, it may still be Rosh Chodesh. And here we are in the month of Av, in the 9 days. I wanted to continue our little kind of series that we're doing on dealing with challenges, and also kind of share, um, you know, as talking about some of the different ways to deal with certain types of challenges, just kind of share with you some of the thoughts that I was having yesterday as Shkia was happening, as we were going into the 9 days, as Av was starting. Um, there was a lot that needed to be done over the course of the day. I was very busy doing laundry. And as Av came in, as Shkia came in, there was this almost like I felt this kind of like strange feeling of like really feeling it, like feeling like this, there's this kind of just eerie, also just like waiting to see what's going to happen and with all the situation going on here. And, a lot of davening, a lot of just trying not to think about things too much, not check the news too much, but also stay connected and know what's happening. And I went through a bit of a thought process that I wanted to share with all of you because I think um, it really has an effect not just on our when we think about it, not just as we relate to Hashem during these days, but we can apply it to all of our relationships, which is what we're meant to do, right? We know that the first and foremost parallel in our lives with our and how we learn so much about our relationship with Hashem is through our relationship with our spouse. Our relationship with our husband has a lot of parallels, right? Also, our relationship to our parents. So, we learn a lot about how we relate to parents and children. And primarily, we also relate to Hashem as a spouse. So I was thinking, like, what is really like the avoda of these days? Like, how do I want to spend these days? What do I want to share? What do I want to spend my time concentrating on? What do I want to share with all of you? And part of me was just feeling like I want to feel that uplifted. I want to feel connected. I want to feel to remember that, you know, we are close to Hashem and we are connected with Him even in these difficult days. And then I reminded myself that this we are going into this period of time called the 9 days. We're getting closer to Tisha B'Av. And the reality is that we're meant to feel a bit of a disconnection. We're meant to feel like this, you know, sad time. We're meant to feel like something's off, right? We're meant to feel and I realize like that's kind of the point is for us to take some time to recognize how distant we actually are. Now, hear me out for a second. Where this is a time to recognize the distance that is present in our relationship with God. Now, that doesn't mean that our relationship with God is one of distance. We know it's not. How do we know? First of all, we know that we're not supposed to spend every day like this, right? And we talked about this a little bit a few weeks ago. The primary aspect of our relationship with Hashem is one of closeness, one of our father, our king, like a husband, someone that we dive into and speak to, who's taking care of us, who's watching out for us, who we feel in our lives on a daily basis. As much as possible, we connect with him and we know that he's here, he's with us, he's protecting us, he's connected with us. And at the same time, we're holding two truths. There is a reality that our relationship with Hashem is not in the ideal state that it's meant to be at. We know that because we are in exile, because we have no Beis Hamikdash, because we have no Korbano, because we don't have the ability to connect to Hashem in the deepest and most intimate way. And it's important no matter how close we are to Hashem, I always have think of this beautiful story that I mean, it's a difficult story, but I remember once hearing the story of, if anyone has been in Yerushalayim for Tisha B'av. So it's a fascinating thing. The people, throngs and throngs of people, just come to the kotel all night. all night. They're coming to the Kotel. They're walking in like of all hours of the night. And I've actually heard that one of the reasons that Jews of all kinds come to the Kotel for Tisha B'Av is because they want to be able to tell their children, I was at the last Tisha B'Av at the Kotel, right? Before it was, the Kotel was, the means to get somewhere. Even more, like it was the way to get up to to the base of Mikdash. So there's a story told, and you'll have to forgive me. I've heard it told in like trying to remember if it's Rav Shlomo Karbach or if it's Rav Machlis. A story once of somebody who's at the Kotel, and during this time, I think it's a later story. I think it's Rav Machlis, and he ran into this Rav, and he says to the Rav, I'm having a really hard time, like with all these Jews around, with so many people here, um, coming to connect, and you see like kibbutz galuyot, Jews from all over the world coming to the Kotel. I'm having a really hard time feeling sad. Like it feels like, wow, look at all these people. He's so close. Like this is amazing. We're all here in Jerusalem. And the Rav said, okay, so I want you to think of it like this. And then I always tell the story, like I always kind of put it in my own voice. Let's say you, right? I'm talking to you, whoever you're listening. Imagine that you decide one day you're in Jerusalem for Shabbos and you decide, I'm going to go visit Hannah. Okay. So it's a little hot. You take some water, you put on your running shoes, and you start walking towards the old city. And it's a bit of a trek, but you get to Shar Yafo and you're like, oh, I'm at Jaffa Gate. I'm almost there. You walk through the Rova and you're getting closer and closer to my house, and you're very warm. You're like, soon I'll be inside. There'll be air conditioning. There'll be some water. There'll be food. I can give Hannah a hug, right? When if I'm not too sweaty. And you're so excited. And then you get to my building, right? Imagine you know exactly where I live. You get to my building and you come around to the front door and you're so excited. You're almost there and you knock on the door, but I'm not home. I'm not there. And he said, that is what it is to be at the Kotel on Tisha B'Av with all these people. It's so close. We're so close. But Hashem's not home yet. There isn't, we don't have the ability to go and connect with Hashem in the most intimate way. It doesn't matter how close you are to my door. If I'm not there, you can't come in. You don't get to hug me when I'm not there, right? And so it's so powerful to recognize that Hashem, the rabbis have instituted that we have these days in the midst of of like our regular lives where we know that Hashem is with us and we're connected with Him. We have these days to remind ourselves that the connection is not perfect. It's not exactly the way it's supposed to be. There's something missing. It's a big piece that's missing. And the idea, let's kind of compare it to maybe your relationship with your husband, where there may be times that you feel very distant from him and you feel like it's not where you want it to be. You're trying to connect and it doesn't seem like he's home, right? Or you feel like you just keep missing each other, and you're trying to connect. And what generally happens is that we take this piece, this reality that today I'm having a hard time connecting, or on a certain topic I'm having a hard time connecting, or there's a certain area of my relationship where I'm feeling disconnected. And what we do is we kind of project that onto the entire relationship, right? We're fighting about this. It means our relationship is a disaster. We're not connecting on this thing. It means that we have this horrible marriage. We're I'm not feeling close to him. He must hate me. He must want to divorce me. He must be done with me. I don't like this aspect of him. I can't believe I married him. Like we take pieces. We take these pieces, these struggles that we have, and we project it like onto the entire relationship, and we make it the totality of our relationship with our husband. And the idea is not to say, oh, it's just a piece of your relationship. it doesn't matter and push it away. Okay, it doesn't matter, yes, you're struggling, but he's a great guy and you have a great relationship. So forget about it. That would be like just being over positive about it. And we talked about how it's so important to recognize where you're struggling so that, and this is the piece that's so important, we don't need to over generalize and over project and basically see this issue that we're having, this area of disconnection, as the totality of our relationship. We can compartmentalize, know that we have this issue. It's not the totality of our relationship, and yet it is important to deal with that piece as that compartment, right? To look and see, I would love to feel more connected to him. I do want us to have a better physical relationship, or I do want to spend more time together. I do want to be able to hear his ideas without getting triggered. I do want to be able to share without feeling like I'm being pushed away. I do want to understand what we each, the different ways that we want to deal with chinuch. I do want to be able to, feel more connected in this way. Yes, there's a whole other relationship that I have, and that's important to focus on. And it is important to also be aware of the challenges so that we can know and have clarity to look at them and say, well, what's my piece here? What's missing? What can I do about it? I need to communicate about? What do I need to learn? And sometimes we do need to feel that lacking because we don't want to get to a place of not caring, right? We don't want to get to a place of, what's the word that they use, right? Indifference. We don't want to get to indifference. We don't want it to overtake the relationship, but we also don't want to be indifferent to the parts of our relationship that aren't the way we want them. So let's connect that now to our relationship with Hashem. It's easy for us, especially 2,000 years into exile, it's easy for us to say, we're good with what we have. We know how to connect to Hashem. We've gotten used to, this type of Judaism. We're used to like doing the mitzvot that we can and just putting in more davening and learning Torah and looking to the rabbis instead of the Nevi'im and the Kohanim. Like, we're good. We're good with what we have. And not even feeling like there's anything lacking. And when we're able to come to Jerusalem, go to the Kotel, feel connected to Hashem in that way, then it's like we could so easily say, okay, like what's missing? Okay, so I'll fast on Tisha B'Av, but like what's really missing? Is anything really missing? Do we feel it? And that's why it's important to have this time where we actually get clear on what we're missing so that we feel it. So we don't feel like, I don't know, this looks pretty good. Like, what am I fasting? We have to recognize we got to the door, we're knocking on the door, and we can't get in. We still can't get in. We have to notice what's missing so that then we can ask the question, how do we get in? Not just what's missing in terms of like the physical reality. We can't go to the base of Mikdash. But what's missing in the relationship that's not an ability that's not possible for us. And that we have very clear, right? We have the Nevuah of Zechariah, and forgive me if we spoke about this, the Nevuah of Zechariah, where the people come during the building of the first Beit Hamikdash. And they say, sorry, the second Beit Mikdash, and they say, do we still need to fast? And Zechariah says, well, have you fixed all the problems that caused the first Beit Mikdash to be destroyed? Which makes it very clear that what we need to focus on, if we see that we're not in an ideal state, is all of the things that the Nevi'im shared with us. Not just Zechariah, Yirmiyahu, Yeshayahu, Yecheskel, everything that they shared about how to treat each other and how to connect to Hashem and how to connect as a people, how to do mitzvot, how all everything that we have the information. We get to be reminded to reconnect to it and to check in with it and to we see like the tools, the focuses that we can take to make a difference and get past the walls, get into the home, right? Get through the door and really deeply connect with Hashem. So it's not enough to like we don't want to just forget about it and be like, okay, we're good. That's indifference. And if we're indifferent, then we're not going to recognize the what's missing. We also don't want, and this was the other piece I was saying before, we also don't want that to take over how we think of our relationship with Hashem. If, we could become like
Mhm.
the 9 days kind of Jews where like everything is focused on I'm so far from Hashem. I'm so disconnected from Him. Look at all the things that are difficult, all the things. And we become like very heavy and we just feel like He's not with us. And that's why it's important to recognize that this is a component, an important component of our relationship with Hashem. And to know that it's not the totality. And again, going back to our relationships, when we see a struggle, when we see a place that we feel disconnected from our husbands or anyone, when we feel disconnected from ourselves, when we feel disconnected from a child, when we feel something's off, we don't want to just ignore it. Ignoring it isn't dealing with it. Ignoring it is not looking to see what can be done about it. It doesn't just go away. Most of our problems don't just go away unless we're tired, then we need to sleep, right? But most of our problems aren't just going to go away. At the same time, it's important not to make that issue the totality of who we are, who they are, what our relationship is, because that's when we give up. Again, we can become indifferent. We can give up. We can feel such despair. We're not meant to feel such despair, right? We're always, even Eicha itself, when we read Eicha, it ends on a high note, right? And then we repeat the sentence before because it's a little bit too high. But sorry, no, the last note is a little bit more depressing, and we reread the pasuk before so that we can end on a bit of a Hashivenu Hashem. Hashem, bring us back to. We know that Chadesh Yameinu Kakedem, bring us back to where we know we can be. We know you're going to do that. We know that this is not forever. We know this is not a forever state. We know this is temporary. So we can use that knowledge even in Tisha B'Av itself, even in the lowest state of mourning that we go into nationally. We always remind ourselves that we are connected to Hashem, right? Even when we're not supposed to learn Torah, we're reading Eicha, right? There's always a connection to Hashem. We're always like like we're even doing it because we feel connected. If we felt totally disconnected, what would even be the point of keeping Tisha B'Av? But it's because we know that there's still a connection, and that's important in all our relationships. When there's a struggle, when there's an issue, when we feel a loss, when we feel something's missing, something's not the way that we want it to be, to recognize that's not the totality of the relationship. It's an aspect that we want to deal with. We want to we want to work on it, right? We don't just cast it aside. We want to work on it. We look to see how we can work on it, and we remind ourselves that we have a relationship outside of that. The reason that issue hurts, the reason this thing brings me pain is because I love this person, because I want a relationship with this person, because they matter to me. That's why it's so important to take time, not just to be in a let's always be positive, let's always like make it like everything's good. Then we'll miss out on the potential to fix the things that are not the way we want them to be. If we're always in a state, it's like that, you know, that question of like, how do we accept ourselves and also work on ourselves. It's that we recognize I am enough the way that I am. And that doesn't mean I'm perfect, right? I am like who I am today is worthy and is the way Hashem created me. And I look at the things that are not where I want them to be so I can grow, so I can improve. And I have the strength to improve because I know, Shasani Kirtzono, I am the way Hashem created me. I am enough in this moment. And it's the same in our relationships. It's the same in our relationships. We don't need to the sadness, the despair, sorry, the sadness and the feeling of loss when something is not the way we want it to be does not need to lead us to despair, and it's also not helpful to just ignore them and pretend that those struggles aren't real, because then we'll miss the beauty of building, we'll miss the beauty of improving, of connecting, of figuring out what's not working and reconnecting, rebuilding, fixing it, doing that tshuva in all of our relationships. So I hope that this was helpful for all of you. If anyone has any, kind of thoughts or questions or comments, it feels very quiet here for some reason. Thanks so much. You're so, so welcome. And I wish us, Bezrat Hashem, we should see a week of nechama. We should be comforted. We should be safe. Bezrat Hashem, may we see many, we feel that protection that we have from Hashem, Be'ezrat Hashem, and also to find some, to recognize within ourselves where we're feeling distance from Hashem and acknowledge it so that then we can say, okay, and how can I reconnect? What do I need to do personally, not to what other people need to do? What can I do to reconnect, to bring myself closer? When I recognize where there's darkness, I can figure out how to bring some light to that area, to light it up so that I don't have to feel disconnected. I don't have to have that disconnection of my relationship, but it's important to acknowledge where that disconnection is happening, not make it mean anything bad about us or the other person or the relationship, but to know that as we're always working towards something greater, and it's when we acknowledge what's where the darkness is that we can bring more and more light into the world. Bezrat Hashem, we'll all do that. Bezrat Hashem in our way, and we'll we won't see each other next week as it'll be Tisha B'av over here already. Bezrat Hashem, it should be a day of celebration. And Bezrat Hashem, we should, like I said, only feel more connection and protection in our lives. And as we get closer, as we, move through this process. And I look forward to connecting with you all after Tisha B'av, Bezrat Hashem, in with Besorot Tovot, with only good news and more uplifting for all of Am Yisrael.
Oh,
Thank you for all the positive feedback that you're all sharing. I wish you all a meaningful rest of the week. And until we meet again, may we all be blessed to live, love, and be loved with all our hearts. Goodbye for now.